Kids, this is volume 6 of my paranormal life. Some of you, I got a couple comments privately that are saying that they feel like all this isn't exactly paranormal, but if you stick with it, it's all going to make sense at the end. I promise. I'm building life experiences and different things, and it'll make sense as we go on in time, particularly when I wrap it up at the end. Anyway, for today's volume 6, I'm going to wrap up my life in South Florida. Everything else that happened in South Florida before I moved to Central Florida. South Florida, for the most part, was a time in my life where I was not very open. I kind of closed myself off, with the exception of the ghosts in San Juan and different the ghosts of the Biltmore and different things. As I became a massage therapist, I started to open up a lot more. When I hit Central Florida, which we'll get to in the next several videos, things went like nuclear. It was crazy. So, South Florida. I had the pleasure of having lots and lots of diverse, different kinds of clients. And one thing that I became aware of, which I had never been aware of before, was that when I worked with people, whether they came to my studio or I went to their place or their hotel or whatever, some people brought spirits with them. Some people brought one, some people brought a couple. Some were more active than others. Sometimes they would appear to me one at a time, sometimes in groups. It varied wildly. It was interesting in the fact that I did not have, other than studying world religions in general and talking with people in general about world religions, I had no specific information about religions until I started seeing them manifest. And I mean all of them. So whenever people ask me, or whenever people talk about religion, and they think that they are right and that is the way, they're all absolutely right. Everybody. Whether you're one of those firebrand, Bible-thumping, demon-loving, everybody's going to hell Christian, or you're a jihadist Muslim, or you're a Zen Buddhist, or you're a white or a black witch, or you're a voodoo priestess, or whatever it is, if you believe it, it's going to come true in your life. I promise it. You will manifest your beliefs. You will manifest your fears and your dreams and everything else. It will happen for you. I promise. And if you're scared of going to hell because of your sins, you will go to hell because of your sins. And if you think you're going to heaven and there's going to be angels and Jesus and all this kind of stuff, or you're going to get 29 virgins and a new car, or whatever the hell you want to believe, it's going to happen for you. So I would say, you know what? Better luck. Better luck that you finally understand that you will reap what you sow, and you also reap what you believe. And I learned a lot about world religions in real life because of my clients, because my clients, again, were very diverse. And things that I had never heard of, never understood, never studied, I have seen. And the only reason I know about them is because someone would come into my life after the fact, and I'd have an offhanded discussion with them about something I witnessed, and they would say, I know that. This is blah, 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 and they would explain it to me. And it came from all over the place. So this is how it started out, and it's expanded ever since. These people would literally show up in my room with my client. My client would lay down on the table after we did the talking and everything. Sometimes I could see them before, but most of the time they would become very clear to me when my clients were on my table. And some of them wanted to talk. Some of them just hung out and watched very protectively. And some of them wanted to get inside of me and work through my body to do what they knew this person needed. Now, I've always been very open, and again, my great grandmother, who comes to me, who gave me this supposed gift, or this thing. She doesn't say it's a gift. It's not a curse. It just is. Um, she said, never put a horse in a race. So having people possess me never scared me at all. Now, a lot of people are very scared of that concept, and I know for a fact that if spirits have a bad intention, my great grandmother will appear in a heartbeat and do some ass whipping, and I've seen her do it. I've seen her whip some ass. Now, I've also learned since then that anything that comes inside of me that's negative, or you can associate with negativity of any way, or whether it's making somebody sick, is the way I look at it. If it's not positive or negative, so it's something that's making somebody else sick. If that comes into me, I know how to digest it. I am a vulture. Now, I'm also batshit crazy. So, what I have this trap set up inside that's like a fun house. And it literally is like looking in the mirror, fun house. It's just, it freaks things out, freaks spirits out, particularly spirits and ghosts. It scares the crap out of them because they get stuck inside and they can't get out. And then I just slowly digest them, and they wish they'd never done it, and then they go away. So, and I do that often, and it causes me a lot of physical destruction, but that's just part of the game. Now, when I first started, though, I didn't necessarily let people into my body. It just sort of started to happen, and I can describe the sensation in the fact that there is one. Besides there's a mental sensation, there is a physical sensation when you get possessed. It comes in, and you can feel it come in. It makes this kind of ripping sensation, I guess. It's not as bad as when it leaves. When it leaves, it just like feels like it's just tearing your insides out whenever they step out. Even if they're good, the spirits with good intentions, it comes in and it feels, and that you can tell that it's something else inside of you. It's like if you have your dreams jumped by a spirit. Spirits can jump your dreams. My mother is very good at this, for example, my dead mother. She has this penchant, and she's gotten stronger as she's been dead longer, and I've gotten stronger to counteract her. But she occasionally, every couple of years, she'll sneak into a dream and take it over and make it hers. And I started having, at first I didn't realize what was going on, and then my great grandmother said, "You're getting jumped, Dick." So she's very blunt, which I appreciate. I appreciate bluntness, as much as sometimes it hurts. I appreciate the truth, the blunt truth, more than bullshit and smoke blown up my ass. So my mother would jump my dreams, and that's a form of possession also. So she would come in, and then I would be having a dream about something, and she would take over, and then she'd suddenly start changing things and humiliating me in front of my friends and doing these other things, and she'd show up, and I don't think about her, and I don't normally dream about her. She's so far out of my mind. I put her so far away that she's just an antidote that I use as an example of how not to do everything, basically. And she'll come in and she will make my dreams suddenly very uncomfortable for me. And then she'll pop up. And then she'll like make herself known, like, hey, I got the best of you. Now, I've said before in an earlier video, and I'll say it again, spirits do not act on the same time schedule as we do. They don't instantly respond necessarily. Their responses can be delayed quite a bit by a few seconds, a few minutes, a couple hours, a couple days, a couple years, depends on what it is. And in my mother's case, it takes her about 2 or 3 minutes to catch up to whatever's when I start actively taking her on in my dreams. Um, she's strong, but I'm quicker. So, and I'm strong too. Because I am, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, even though I'm adopted. She taught me to be as much of a bitch as she ever was. So, for example, one dream, she came in, and I finally had enough. And this was like the ninth or 10th dream she jumped me, and so I started. So in this house that we lived in one time, it had a very short, kind of steep driveway, and so she we ended up walking out the side through the gate out to the front in front of the garage in this little short driveway, and I decided that I had enough of her. So I mentalized, it's kind of Freddy Krueger, so I mentalized literally a table, and I threw her back on the table and just started beating the shit out of her. I mean, really getting her good. I mean, beating her to a pulp. And it took her a few minutes to realize that I was getting her in my dream. And I was getting to her badly. And she had gotten strong enough that she actually made my cell phone ring. And I'm not kidding. This just to wake me up so I'd stop beating on her. Because I was basically, and I was screaming at her, "You're never allowed in my life, in my head, anything. I want nothing to do with you." And I was literally banishing her. And before I could completely banish her, she made my cell phone ring and woke me up. And it was some poor woman in Tennessee that had no intention of calling me. She didn't even realize that she said, "I did not dial the wrong number. I don't know how I got connected to you." And I knew it was my mother. And so at 3:20 in the morning, this woman from Tennessee's on the phone, and we don't, she's waking me up, and she doesn't know why I'm answering the phone of her friend, and I don't understand why she's calling me. And then I knew it was my mother because I could hear her laughing. And, and so the battle continues. But that's how invasive spirits can really be. So it is serious when people say, yes, you can be possessed. You can be. But you don't need to necessarily be scared of it. You can control it, and you can also force it out. Or put it in a fun house and make it suffer until you digest it and it fades away. Now, if you decide to do the latter, it will take a physical toll on you regardless of the spirit's intention. I do promise that. It does. It just does. It's because they're on my belief is they're on a totally different wavelength. So it just starts to tear the body apart, literally. And when it comes to like my clients, now this is where it gets really interesting. And this is also where I'm not a curious person by nature. In other words, like my grandmother on my mother's side, for example, she would snoop around her own house every single night. The gatekeeper. I talk about the gatekeeper occasionally. The gatekeeper snoops around our house every day. Very curious person. Opens all the mail, has to check everything all the time. Checks phone messages, checks everything. I'm not that curious. I don't care. I don't go into the gatekeeper's room. I just wait for the mail to be put down in front of me because I hate mail anyway. And then I usually just look at it quickly and throw it in a box. Unless it's junk mail, and then I rip it up and throw it in the trash. So different people have different things about them. But when you're working with people or you're sensitive to the paranormal, you might find yourself suddenly having this ability to see and hear people that come with other people. And for me, it can be very distracting, particularly in large groups, because then people want to talk. Spirits, some of them love to talk, and they love to tell you very personal things about the people that they're with. And sometimes, and some of them have a very good sense of humor. So you can imagine working on somebody and they're telling you like all these things, personal things about this person that you don't need to know, or you know really have no business knowing, but they're telling you anyway. Or they start telling jokes at that person's expense, which then as you're working you have to not laugh. And thank goodness that I have an extremely dry sense of humor, so I practice not cracking for a long time. Especially when I did stand-up comedy and just my comedy, I do every single moment of my life. I am very flat. I deliver it very seriously, very matter-of-factly, and sometimes it just passes right over people. So, and it was a challenge because some of the stuff I heard was just gobsmacking. And interestingly enough, if I heard, massage therapists are kind of like hairdressers in a way, people and psychotherapists, because people not only will come for a massage, but some of them, instead of just letting go completely physically and kind of falling into this trance like sleep, instead they will want to vomit up all their problems, emotional, mental, and physical problems. They want to vomit them up for you to listen to. Now, usually they're more timid on the first, like the first visit than they, and when they become a regular client, they become much more chatty if they're a chatty client. But if they have a spirit that's already told me everything and more, suddenly what the spirit had told me before, and now they're starting to vomit this information up, it matches up perfectly. So it validates itself. It's really interesting. And I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but that is just one of the best things about touch and being sensitive, is that you can intentionally or unintentionally find out way too much about people. And I'm, like I said, I'm not a curious person, so a lot of times if I find myself in groups, um, and spirits start chattering too much and want to talk to me because they suddenly realize I see them and I can hear them, I'll walk away because it's just, ugh. For example, I went on this wonderful trip to Savannah, Georgia this year, and I went on a 3.5 hour private tour with a specialist in Savannah, and I just told him what I was seeing, feeling, and experiencing, and he was there to tell me the history, validate or invalidate anything that I was experiencing. So it was a perfect tour. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. I just said I would see something a block ahead and say, you know, I'm starting to experience this, or I'm seeing this, or I'm feeling this. And he said, well, I'm just about to get to that, blah, 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 blah. And he took the history, everything else. So it's nice to be validated on an instantaneous basis, but that's not always possible. When you do get, if you do allow yourself to get possessed, make sure you're getting possessed for a good reason. Either you're healing, you're letting somebody heal their loved one through you, or you're taking something that makes somebody else or some people or a place sick, and you're just taking it away. Don't play with the paranormal, and don't play with your abilities and be glib, because they're very serious. For example, before I realized, you know, as I learned, what I ended up doing was I ended up scaring somebody really bad, because I had this client. The client's aunt had shown up and was there. And at first she kind of just hung back, but then she told me some things about this client, which I had no idea about. They were highly personal, and it was none of my business. And I don't know why she was telling me, but I figured, oh, well, if they're telling me, I better tell the client. And this is, you know, stupid learning. And again, I'm as gullible and dumb as they get. So After the service, I sat the client up. I said, oh, by the way, your aunt, and I described his aunt, came in with you, and this is what she said. and and the guy freaked out. He totally flipped because he didn't come in for that. He didn't pay me for that. He paid for a massage. He just wanted a massage, period. Nothing else, just a massage. And I didn't realize that, you know, that was unnatural because it just didn't occur to me at the time. I just thought, well, she showed up, she told me this, so you better pass it on. I learned real quick not to do that because he turned white, and then he turned blue, and then he grabbed his clothes and he ran out of my place and never to return. And he told some people in town how scary I was. So it got back to me. That's just how dumb I really am. And my great grandmother came to me right after that and said, idiot, don't talk unless you're told to talk, and you'll know the difference. So I learned to shut up. And if I heard things and people just came to me for a physical massage, I didn't share all that energy stuff and what the dead people said or the things I saw in their tissues or anything else. I just zipped it and left it, alone, and threw it out of my head as quickly as possible. Or even if I let their dead relatives come into me and work through them, I didn't say anything. I just let them come in and let them go out and do their little, do their thing. And, I handled the minor destruction of my body for it because that's what I was getting paid for, and that's what I do. Now, when I met the gatekeeper down in South Florida, I didn't know anything about the gatekeeper. I didn't even know that person would end up being part of my life in any way, shape, or form. And I did a massage for the gatekeeper, but this was after we met socially. So it wasn't a paid massage, it was just a free one. And I met his father and his grandmother. And it was extremely intense, and I did share. And it was validated, and it was extremely emotional. Now, as I got to know the gatekeeper more, the gatekeeper brought a whole new religion into my life, which I didn't know anything about. And occasionally I talk about it. It's Macumba. And he has manifested it all over the place, not only at my house currently now, my house down in South Florida, and now having that knowledge, when I see certain things, now I realize, because I have that knowledge, what it is. Same thing with Kabbalah, advanced Kabbalah rituals, or these other strange things that that I've never even heard of. They've all been manifested, and people use occasionally in some of these advanced rituals. People use psychics and mediums, and people and sensitives and intuitives as energy sources, or like batteries, because they can't do it themselves, so they need a battery. And we just end up becoming this battery. And it's draining. It's extremely draining. It can be very, very intense. I'll share some of those anecdotes with you in a future video. But that was all about South Florida. That was pretty much the highlights of what I learned down there. And when I moved to Central Florida, if I thought I was open before, I realized how closed off I really was, because when I moved to Central Florida, my life exploded with just things coming at me from all directions. So I got the video shorter today. Hope you enjoyed it. Be careful if you have gifts. Don't take them for granted. Don't be glib. Don't talk when you're not supposed to talk. Sometimes silence is better. Unless they're coming to you for that reason, don't just start spouting off, because why terrify people? It's not good. And if you do allow possession, don't be afraid, but do realize that there is a price you'll pay, regardless if it's a good intention or a bad intention. There's a price, and it takes a physical toll on you, and that I can assure you. So with that being said, have a great one. Talk to you soon.